Hi everybody, Gene here. Welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast, where every single week we answer the most common and uncommon questions about tapping in EFT so you can eliminate self-sabotage and take the action that you want. As a reminder, I have been producing tap-along videos every single week. We've made a slight change to those videos. Those videos are now appearing on the website on Tuesdays instead of Mondays, just giving folks the opportunity to start their week in craziness. We're finding that when sharing content, doing it a little later in the week, it makes it easier for people to engage with it. If you would like to receive an email reminder every single week about those videos, and the reminder is really simple. It basically just says, hey, here's a new video that you can tap along to. Here is the link. All you need to do is go to tappingqna.com/video. That's tappingqna.com/video. And you can sign up to receive those reminders so you'll get access to those free videos every single time a new one goes live. This is Gene Montrastelli, and welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast, recorded live to date from Williamsburg in Brooklyn. This is episode 224, originally aired January 22nd, 2020. Hi everyone, I hope this finds you well wherever you are and whatever time of day you're getting a chance to listen to this. Thanks for spending a little time with me today. Today we're going to talk about a concept that I have taught a lot of my clients that came out of a conversation with a client as we kind of crafted this new way of approaching things. And that's how we can think about our body and think about our entire system, our mind, body, spirit, in a way that allows us to do transformation faster. And most importantly, if you use this tool at the beginning of the day, it is going to set you up for success because you are going to be paying attention to the blocks that might be getting in the way before you get to them, which is going to make taking action all day significantly easier. Before we do that, I just want to thank all of the amazing sponsors of the Tapping Q&A podcast. It warms my heart to know that people have chosen, out of the goodness of their own heart, to support the work that we are doing here. For those of you who are supporters, please let me know if you have any questions. I've been sending out a lot of bonus MP3s for things that I've been recording for other clients. Please let me know if you're not receiving them. If you would like to receive all of the extra bonus content that supporters receive, including a custom tap along where I create a tapping script just for you on whatever topic you want, all you need to do is go to tappingqna.com/support. That's tappingqna.com/support. And I appreciate all of those who've chosen to do exactly that. When I am doing my client work, there are a number of fundamentals that I am thinking about in conscious and unconscious ways. And these fundamentals help dictate the way that I approach a problem, how I approach clients, how I approach transformation, because it gives me a framework to think about and work within. And one of those fundamentals is that we are notoriously bad eyewitnesses to our own experience. And when a client reports something to me, when they tell me what is going on in their system and what is going on in their life, I don't dismiss it, but I also don't necessarily think it is true. Let's think about eyewitness testimony to begin with. So if you were standing at the corner and there is an accident and it's a hit and run and someone drives off and the police know that you were there and you are helping them out and they're asking you some questions about what you saw, and you make the statement, I saw them driving a 1967 red Mustang and they went speeding off. Now, that is a useful piece of data. Someone who was there saw a particular car and which direction it went speeding off. The problem is that our memory and the way that we see things is constantly being filtered. And so the information might not be accurate. Like, you might not know what a Mustang looks like, or you might not know what a 1967 Mustang looks like. And that information could be wrong, or you're simply misremembering what had happened because our memory isn't a snapshot of what is going on. Now, this does not mean that then the detectives who are trying to figure out who did the hit and run, they only look for red 1967 Mustangs. And at the exact same time, they don't say, well, eyewitness testimony is flawed, and so we can just ignore it. Instead, what it becomes is it becomes an entry point for us to do investigation which makes it easier for us to figure out what's going on. So more than likely, what the police would be doing is they would be looking for red cars that are of that era, that are sports cars, which will make it easier for them to start narrowing their search down, but they're not limiting their search to those specific details. The way our brain works is we like to know how things work. We like to have explanations. We like to have information. And this is part of the reason why we create stories that we tell about how things work and why they are the way that they are. It's the reason why when you are watching the local news, you're listening to radio, before they go to commercial break, they always lead with something that they call a tease, or they end with something they call a tease, where it's, when we come back from the break, we're going to tell you the 6 things the city's not telling you about the water. And so we want to have that loop closed, even if we're someone who is passing through town and it's not the city that we live in, because there's this open loop, we want to close it. That's what our brain does, is it puts together stories to explain the world. And so when we are dealing with an issue, this is the reason why we're notoriously bad eyewitnesses to our own experience, because what we do is we start to come up with stories as to why we are the way that we are. And oftentimes when I'm working with more sophisticated clients who've done personal development work and have done reflection, and maybe they work with clients, they've worked with practitioners before, what they do is when they come to me and they're filling out their intake form, they're telling me what's going on. This is the issue I struggle with, and this is the reason why I struggle with this issue. And they might have a story from their past. They might have something cultural. They might have something from their family. They might have a series of experiences. And as a practitioner, I treat those just like eyewitness testimony. I'm not saying it's wrong and that the person's just making something up. And I'm also not saying it's right, that it's the only way that things happen. That regularly I'll have clients say, I'm struggling with this. And when I was 8 years old, this was the experience I had. And because this happened when I was 8, I now feel this way. Now, most of the time when clients tell me stories like that, logically, it makes sense. Like if we were trying to see a cause and effect relationship, we could say, oh, yes, if this was the cause, it makes sense that this might be the effect. I have body issues because when I was 13 years old and I was at someone's birthday pool party, I came out in my swimming suit and someone pointed and laughed at me. Again, that's a logical connection that we could make between the body issue and an experience that happened in the past. But that particular memory might not be the initial sensitizing event, the thing that is the root cause, and it might not be related to it at all, but it's a connection that we have made inside of our head. That we could be in a circumstance that we grew up in a family where we had someone in our family who was super fussy about their weight and super fussy about the way that they looked, and they complained about it all the time, and they overworked to make sure that they were skinny and looked perfect all the time. And we internalized it from being around that loved one. But because that was something that was just in the background, it wasn't like this event that caused something, we might not necessarily recognize that is the reason why we have body image issues. But we do have a story which says, hey, this event happened, people pointed and laughed, therefore this is the way I am. And if we take that piece of information at face value and we spend all of this time tapping on this memory about people pointing and laughing at us, it's probably not going to really transform the body issue that we have, because we're working on the wrong root cause. And so when I say, again, that my clients and myself are notoriously bad eyewitnesses to our own experience, it doesn't mean that we're lazy, and it doesn't mean that we're good at assessing things. Instead, the part of us that always wants to have a story to explain why we are the way that we are is going to take precedence sometimes over our ability to take a step back and assess what is going on. This is the reason why, and if you've listened to any of my past audios where I've actually tapped with clients, this is the reason why I'm consistently having someone imagine their experience. So you're afraid of doing something, or you struggle with the way that you look. And then I say, great. As you get that sensation of struggling with the way that you look, I want you to tune into your body, and I want you to feel in your body the place that is. And then once you feel in the body to the place where it is, I want you to ask that part, what is it afraid of? So there might be a tightness in the chest. And so by me asking the tightness in my chest, what I'm doing is I'm disconnecting or disassociating my conscious mind from trying to figure out what's going on. So I'm not telling the story that I've told over and over again, or I'm not trying to tell a logical story. Instead, what I'm doing is I'm giving the physical sensation the opportunity to speak, which is really, I'm just using a metaphor of the sensation in my body to give my subconscious mind the opportunity to bring information forward. And sometimes when that happens, we find something really obvious and clear, and it might be the story that we told in our intake form that says this is the way we are. And other times it's something that makes sense. It's like, oh yeah, it's because of this and I didn't think of it. And sometimes it's things that we would never think of at all. Something that is so disconnected from our experience that we're not even sure why it is this is coming up. And it's so funny. I do a lot of my client calls I do on Zoom and Skype with video so I can see my clients. And when we're doing this process, I say, close your eyes and I want you to tune into this sensation. And I want you to ask it the question, what's it afraid of? And it's so funny to watch clients because they close their eyes and they're present and they're really doing the work well, to see them kind of like lean back and just kind of smile or look surprised. Like, oh, right. You can actually see them in the moment discovering the information that the subconscious mind is bringing forth. And so when this happens, oftentimes what we find is we find a part of our system that is working too hard. The vocabulary I use all the time is it is a disproportionate or misinformed emotional response. And as we tune into that and as we think about that, as I start to work with that disproportionate or misinformed emotional response, what I have found in my tapping is just like we treated the sensation as having some agency. We're asking the tightness, what's it afraid of? It's almost like we're giving it a personality. Once that happens, I have found it most effective to start working with that sensation as if it was an employee of mine that was over functioning. So for example, you have, let's say you run a coffee shop and you have an employee who is super, super, super meticulous about the cleanliness of the shop. And the instant a crumb hits the floor, they're wiping it up. And the instant patrons get up, they're wiping the table down, or they might even go and wipe the table down while the client's there, while the customer's there, because they see the crumbs everywhere. And so it's great that you have an employee who's really concerned about cleanliness. But if they're spending all of their time sweeping up crumbs and picking up garbage and doing all of that, and they're not actually doing their job in a coffee shop, such as making coffee, then you're not going to be successful as a business and your customers aren't going to be served. So we have an employee who is just working too hard in the wrong way. And so that is the way I like to think about these parts of my body. When I have a part that's really afraid of something, I approach it like it is an over-functioning, overzealous employee. And what that means is when I am tapping, I tune into this fear and I say, I really appreciate the fact that this fear is trying to keep me safe. I'm glad it wants me to be healthy, and I'm glad it wants me to be successful. The exact same thing I would say to an employee that's cleaning up so much. I appreciate the fact that you really want our store to be clean, and I appreciate the fact that you're dedicated to it. Then after I've done that, what I then do is I move on to what I would like them to do instead. Even though I appreciate that this is what you're doing, I would like you to focus on your job, the fear. I would like you to be afraid only when it's dangerous. And if you do that, we're going to be much more successful. And so I'm turning to this part of my system and I'm saying, it's great that you're working really, really hard. Now I want you to work in a different way. The employee, it's great that you're working hard trying to keep everything clean, but what I'd really like you to do for us to be successful is I'd like you to make coffee for the customers when they come in. And so by doing this, what we're doing is we're not fighting with our internal fear. We're not fighting with whatever emotional experience that we're having, but we're getting a chance to re-educate it and retransform it so it works in a better way. Oftentimes what I'm doing with things that are trying to keep me safe in my business, instead of looking out for all of the things that could go wrong, I ask this part of me, because it's so good at looking out, to start looking out for opportunities so my business can grow. or looking out for ways for me to do things faster so I have more time to deal with problems as they come up. So I'm not turning this part of my body off, but I'm retraining it into something useful. Again, exactly the same way that I would deal with an employee who is excited to do their job, but they're just not doing a good job for me. So all of this led me to a really interesting conversation with a client close to a decade ago. And as we started talking about these different employees, he was in a circumstance where he was really struggling with his sleep. And so he found the part of his body that was in charge of his sleep. And every single day, he was just running little training sessions with the employee inside of his body that was running sleep. And over time, it just slowly transformed until his sleep got better and better. And so a number of weeks later, we were talking about this. And I said, wow, you're being a really good boss. And he said, yeah, I actually started having staff meetings every single morning. And he had gotten the term staff meeting from me because I have always had at the beginning of my day, as I was laying in bed, a little staff meeting with whatever is traveling with me through the universe, a little team of all of it that is trying to keep me safe and healthy. And he said, I just took your idea of a staff meeting and I did it inside my body. I just thought of my body as this giant factory. And I was just talking to everybody who worked for me. And I had the creative part, and I had the safety part, and I had the sleep part, and I had the health part. And I thought it was such a fabulous connection of the things that we had already been talking about. And so if you're looking for a really interesting way to start your day or to end your day, to get information about your system, treat it like a giant factory. And what I mean by that is, imagine yourself, you're in charge, sitting in this giant boardroom. For me, I almost imagine that boardroom is behind my forehead and my frontal cortex where I'm making my decisions, but you can put it wherever you want. And for me, it's almost like that is the deck of the spaceship that is kind of moving me forward through the world. And it's the building, the top of the building that is overlooking the factory floor where the management team sits. And I imagine this beautiful, beautiful conference room with a big ovalish table. And I just see every single part of my system sitting around the table. And what I do is I just go over what's going to happen today. This is what I need to accomplish. This is what I'm worried about yesterday. These are what our long-term goals are. And then I just turn into the different parts of my system, the parts that are responsible for my health, for my well-being, for my focus, for my energy, for my creativity, for looking out for danger. And I just see all of these department heads sitting around the table. And the first thing I do is I just listen. And one by one, I go through these parts and I say, hey, is there any information that you need to give me today? And then after doing that, I then start going, great, this is what needs to go on. This is how we need to move forward. Sometimes I'm in a circumstance where different parts of my system are trying to push me in different directions. The part of me that's responsible for safety wants me to hold back so I don't do something dangerous. And the part of me that is trying to push me ahead so I can grow and be more successful, they're in conflict. Because one wants to do what's consistent, the other wants to do what's new. And so oftentimes I'm even mediating between these parts. I'm imagining I have two employees that have different goals, and I'm just having a conversation with them. Now, as you do this, you can just do this strictly as a visualization exercise, or, and this is what I like to do, you can tap while you're doing the entire thing. Because I found when we take some sort of parts mediation exercise like this and we tap at the same time, we're supercharging the power of it. So as I'm mediating between these parts, any resistance that comes up, I'm able to quickly clear it while tapping, just because the resistance is coming up and I'm tuned into it, I'm tapping. I don't have to say anything special, but I just keep going through this visualization. And so by doing this at the beginning of the day, it gives me a framework to set my day up for success. And by doing it at the end of the day, I'm putting myself in a position where I can just clean up whatever emotion and grossness I'm carrying around so that I can sleep in a gentle, easy way. I have found personally when I do this at the end of the day, I typically don't do it at the end of the day right as I'm climbing into bed. But instead, I most of the time do this at the end of my work day. So I'm kind of cleaning up all of this stuff from my professional life so that as I step out the door, I'm refreshed. I've let go of it. I know I'm set up for tomorrow for success. And then I can go and enjoy my evening and do whatever I'm going to do. But with all things, do it works. Some people might do it once a day. You might do it once a week, almost like you're having a regional meeting with all of your managers, or once a month. Like, do the thing that makes the most sense for you. But what this does is it gives us an opportunity to get out of our conscious mind, because the emotions that we're experiencing and the limiting beliefs that we carry and our understanding of the world does not live on our conscious mind. And so if we're trying to solve problems that are part of our unconscious and subconscious mind with our conscious mind, it's not going to work. It's kind of like trying to fix the issue in the bathroom by doing work on the kitchen table. Like, it just doesn't work because we're in the wrong location. We really need to be in the place where we are, in the place that the limiting beliefs exist, in the place where the parts of our system are overfunctioning. And by creating this beautiful little metaphor of the factory, it gives us the opportunity to do it. Now, if you're in a circumstance where a factory isn't something that you want to do, imagine it as some other shape of a business, or imagine it as a team, or imagine it as a group of advisors. Whatever the analogy is that works best for you, find your way to that and give that a try. So that is how I think of my system as a factory, as a way of being able to move forward in a happier, healthier way. I would love to hear your experience with something like this. I would love to hear the analogies you use. If you don't use a factory, please let me know. I can always be reached, Gene, Gene, at tappingqna.com. If you're listening to this inside of the free Tapping Q&A app, all you need to do is just click on the contact button inside of the app. You can send me a voice message or an email from right inside of the app. Or if you go to the website and you click on that contact link up in the menu bar, you can send me both a voice message or an email message from inside the website. I would really love to hear how you use something like this. Also, please share this with a friend. If there's someone in your life who you know would be interested and open to something like this, it would be really fun for you to find someone and just compare and contrast, to go give this a try for a couple of days or a couple of weeks and say, hey, what was your experience like in a factory? Because business owners do this all the time, where they exchange ideas, how they navigate things with employees. I have a couple of clients, so we spend a lot of time on how they manage their people, and they learn a lot in the conversation. You can do the exact same thing if there's someone else in your life who's using this particular tool. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the podcast. In podcasting parlance, subscribe is always free. If you go to any place where audio is available, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, if there's audio, if there's podcasts, just search Tapping Q&A. And if you don't know how to find the podcast or don't know how to podcast effectively, if you go to tappingpodcast.com, you will find our entire back catalog of almost 12 years of audio. We're closing in on our 12-year anniversary of the show. All there absolutely free, and all of the instruction on how you can subscribe to the podcast in all of those different platforms. Questions, comments, guest recommendations, please let me know. I'm doing a bunch of interviews right now for the show as we move into the spring. Please drop me a note, Gene, Gene, at tappingqna.com. For the Tapping Q&A podcast, this is Gene Montrestelli. I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you real soon. Bye-bye. The Tapping Q&A podcast is copyright Gene Montrestelli, Tapping Q&A 2016. All views expressed by guests are those of the guests and not necessarily of Gene Montrestelli or Tapping Q&A.